Okay, we're going to make some textures for the flying boat. Before we can start working on the actual textures, we need to tell the 3D model where the textures go, and that's called a UV-unwrap. So let's go to UV editing and select all the objects in our collection. So this case, a fuselage collection. We have the fuselage, the bottom part, and the cockpit part. Go into edit mode. A to select all, 3 to go in side view and make sure you're in orthographic view with the num5 key. And we're going to press U to unwrap and then project from view. And now here you can see a 2D view of our aircraft. We have now a side view of one side, but actually we want different textures for the other side. So what we can do is go to layout. Our fuselage is only a half now. Go to modifier and apply, I have to be in object mode, apply the modifier, and now we have 2 halves. Let's try this again. Select all the objects, select all, orthographic view, U to unwrap, project from view. Go to UV editing, and here we see we have the same picture basically, which you can now select all, grab, move, scale, etc. We want to make the most out of our texture, so we want to scale this to the largest possible size. We can also select maybe one side. By the way, I'm now in island selection mode. You can here choose select vertices, which you don't want. You can do lines, which you don't want. You can do planes, which you might want, but maybe not. And you can do island modes, which is the most useful here. So we select fuselage, cockpit, underbody, grab, and now we have, I thought we had half the airplane. Apparently we don't. So here we're going to select half the airplane, select all, grab Y on this one. And now if we select all, we see 2 sides. So one of them is obviously the left side and one is the right side. So let's check. The bottom one is the right side, so this is the correct orientation. So the top one, which you see partly now, is obviously in the wrong orientation, so it's fine. We'll select all. Now we drag box select the top one, right click, and then mirror X. And now it's the correct orientation. Now I'm not efficiently using the entire texture just yet. And we can do several things. We can split this in half, so we can just chop it in half and put the cockpits down there. I personally don't like that because I like my fuselages as one piece. Otherwise, we're probably going to see a line somewhere halfway the fuselage. The other thing, we might need this space down here for something else. For example, we can separate the roof, because this is going to be a terrible texture otherwise. So let's select the roof. That should be it. We're not going to do those. Right, let's look from the top. That looks alright. U, project from view. There we go. Now we can rotate 90, grab. And if we press A, we can now give this a nice space. So this looks like maybe there. That's an interesting idea. Place this in the middle. So grab Y and this one there. We can even scale it up to match the same size. It's always handy to have things close together, but not too close because you might get a little bit overlap. So we want to keep a tiny little space between them. Let's see if I touch, is it the same size? Well, good enough. Obviously you can rotate this in any orientation you like. What you also can do is, for example, rotate 180, flip this one upside down, put it there. That's an option. It's probably more efficient with space. So grab Y, go up, although I personally don't like this, so I'm going to undo this. But that's up to you. Now we're going to do the bottom sides. First, I'm going to look from the bottom, press U to unwrap, project from view, press A, rotate 90 degrees, or sorry, 270 degrees, grab Y, come down. Now on the right display, select all objects, edit mode, press A, and now we can see all of them. Okay, so now we have a top, a bottom, a side, and we probably want to redo these. That's a good place. So now we keep some spare room here down the bottom for details that we might add later. Good. First thing we need to do is make a texture. Therefore we go to Shading, Add, Texture, Image Texture, and then New. And here you can give it a name, so B for fuselage, and here this would probably be at 1024, but personally I like to make large textures, so 4K textures at first. It's much easier to shrink them down than to enlarge them. You can just click and drag down, then you have both of them selected. 1024 times 4 equals 4K textures, and then press OK. Click the color button, drag down and put it on base color. Well, we can make black, but it's really handy to actually make it white first, because then we have a white texture like an unpainted airplane. You can also do silver or gray for a bare metal one. We'll do that later. So we can just disconnect base color and just click here on base color and put this all up to white. And then bake the texture, bake the airplane to the texture. Okay, first thing we need to do, here click the little camera, that's render properties. You have to make sure you're in cycles. If you're in Eevee or in anything else, it's not going to work. Let's go to shading mode, select all the objects. Let's double check the settings. We're in cycles mode. Here we have bake. We select bake type diffuse, only color, clear the image, save the file, Ctrl S, and now bake. This might take a while, so I'll see you back after a short break. Okay, we're back, and sadly it has failed. Which is maybe a good thing, because now I can show you what you do when this happens. Let's deselect, select to active, and let's bake them part by part. So for the first one I'm going to keep clear image on, and then when I do the second and the third object I'm going to untick the clear image so we can bake the three objects separate to the texture, and probably it will work then. Okay, this time it has worked. Baking is successful. We go back to UV editing mode. Now image, not image. Now here we can select our texture, so B for fuselage, and save this. You can see the image is not stored outside of Blender with the little star there. So image, save as, B for fuselage, PNG, and put this in the objects folder, and you can see there the tail textures that I've already made. Save as image. Quickly back to shading. If we now pull the color to the base color, nothing happens because now we're seeing the white baked texture on our aircraft. Okay, here I have a decent photograph from the side. I'm going to print screen and select this. Now go to Photoshop, where I already opened the texture, and I'm going to Ctrl V, and this now becomes a second layer. With Ctrl T I can adjust this, and now I must say we're going to put this texture over the aircraft. It's not going to be exact. Let's make it a little bit transparent. This is just going to be our reference image. It's not something we're actually going to see on the aircraft. Now I must say I'm going to demonstrate to you all the technical aspects of making textures. This is not art class, but more easily I'm going to show you what I did with the tail, because I have that opened here. And this shows you I have very organized all my files. I have here the reference images, the way I showed you earlier here on the fuselage, how to locate them. And then on top of that I've built my files. So I'll show you first this base file. So here's the white base texture. I added some details that are structural, that do not belong to the paint scheme. That's just part of the aircraft. This is an inspection hatch. This is a bit darker bit. These are lines of linen where the stitches are covered under, and these are the same. So this is the structure of the aircraft. Now on top of that I've made a livery. So with text I just made the registration marks. With yellow I made the paint. Obviously this is not the final detail, but it shows you how it works. This is enough for the base texture. So what you do is just go to Save As, call it PNG, and this one would be before tail PNG. Okay. The next step would be to make a normal map, because we have a texture and we can use the default metalness of X-plane, but it is probably way too shiny for most aircraft. We need to make a height map, and the height map is basically a gray image, and to find the correct color gray you need to be at 50% between black and white. So you can just manually try to find it, but more accurate is just to put these numbers in, 80, 80, 80, and then you have exactly halfway between black and white. This is the neutral height map. So everything that I make lighter on this map is going to be thicker, and everything that I make darker is going to be thinner or lower. It's not physically going to be higher or lower, but it will look like that in X-plane. The height map, we're going to shading, and then here I made another texture. So I did add texture, add image texture, and then here opened the height map that we made here in Photoshop. So this one, file, save as, and now I'm not going to call it tail, but I'm just giving it another name, PNG, and I call this tail HGT for height. You can give it any name, but this is the name convention that I use. And now we go to Blender, open this height PNG. Then we add a bump map, and X-Plane doesn't work with bump maps. We can use this to make a normal map. So we go add, and here you type bump, and then you get this little bugger, and you connect the color to the height and the normal to the normal. Maybe I'll show it if I disconnect the base color. Now we can just see the height map. And here you can see, it's a little bit hard to see now. Or so here you can see that Blender is trying to make it look like a thicker line. What we do now is we go again to bake. We make another texture, which you're going to call bake tail underscore NML. Color space is not on any of those, but it's going to be on non-color. And we select this one, and then we go bake type normal. Again, clear image, image texture. And now when you bake this, you're going to have a normal map. You can open that texture, and it will look like this. Here you can see our height map converted into a normal texture. Okay, if we load this in X-Plane, it would look really nice, because this is 100% opaque, full metal image. And then with the base color of yellow, this would be pure gold. We can just reduce the opacity to make it less shiny. If it's like halfway, it would be a little bit shiny. But if we don't want any metal, if we want like shiny paint, we have to make it a yellow texture like this. And how we do this, I'm going to show you here with my backup. We go to Image, Adjustment, Levels, select only the blue layer, and drag this all the way to 0, and then press OK. And now we have the same normal map, but without the blue layer, and this is going to give us a non-metal shiny surface. Now if I make the opacity a bit lower, let's say 60% for example, it will be a non-metal surface which is 60% shiny. So here's our little airplane. You can see the base paint, and you can see these ridges if you look carefully. And you can see it is a little bit shiny, but not too much. That's the tail, and now I'm going to continue this process for the fuselage, the wing, the landing gear and the engine. So wish me luck. Okay, for now I'm happy with this. They're obviously not the final textures, mostly placeholders. And for example, the rivets are in the window to demonstrate to you how to make them. All the black lines you see are going to be replaced eventually by 3D objects, physical stringers and footsteps. The window is going to be transparent, but it looks a lot better than it was. And I think now it's time for a test flight. I think we have deserved that. So enjoy the ride and see you on the next one.